Noir is perhaps one of my favorite genres. At least when I have the time to think about an answer. I'm probably leaning towards more humorous when I'm just trying to relax. But when I really want my brain to be along for the ride, noir really does hit the spot. Noir, incidentally, is just, I believe, French for dark. So essentially, this is just a dark genre. But noir has kind of become its own thing, popularized by detective novels and later, or perhaps around the same time, detective movies of the old Humphrey Bogart style. But it doesn't have to be just about detective. It's really good for detective stories, but it doesn't have to be just about detective. The essence of noir, in many ways, is the big lie. What is the big lie? The big lie is that the world is perfectly fine. Noir kind of separates itself from the other dark, or the more darker styles that we've discussed, and other darker styles too, by being very focused on the idea that the world pretends that everything is okay, but underneath the surface, things are definitely not okay. The finer citizenship are not supposed to be bothered by the fact that people are killing each other on Skid Row, that poverty and drug abuse is rampant, that wives are being beaten, children are being kidnapped, dogs and cats shot in the street, whatever. The darkest side of life is supposed to remain behind this big veil of comfort and the safety of illusion. The illusion of safety. Sorry, the illusion of safety. And the stories are usually about people either trying to do this or people having. These are usually the main characters, but they don't have to be. Um, People who are trying to make sure that the veil stays in place, or people who are reluctantly dealing with the fact that the darker side is there, but they have to not make a big deal out of it. Really, to put it quite bluntly, dark things are not handled with the same extremes as grimdark or splatterpunk, or with the solemn despair of nihilism. Dark things are just there, and you need to deal with them. You may contemplate them, they may bother you, you may be slipping into alcoholism or drug abuse or beating your significant other because you can't handle constantly being around these things that you have to be around and have to pretend that you can handle being around. But in the end, the world is the world. There's nothing you can do. It's just Chinatown. As the movie says, if you don't know where the quote is from, it's not meant to be racist. It's a quote from a movie, and it basically means that around this around these places, things are the way they are, and you cannot come running as an outsider to change them. But also, you can probably not change the places where you are not an outsider. Things are bad, and bad things happen to both good and bad people. And you need to accept that and move on. And you need to live a life of some kind of meaning in spite of all this. even if that meaning is just surviving from day to day, just paying the bills. You need to move past the fact that the world around you is horrible and people are just trying to ignore it. Now, the details of noir are often what really fleshes out the genre. And one of the main versions of noir, the classic noir, you could call it. The details in that are usually centered around the idea of urban decay, the fact that cities have gotten big and are not really coping well with all the population density. It causes corruption. It causes the spread of diseases. It causes the spread of crime, and criminals are having a way too easy time because police just can't handle them all. And not surprisingly, this genre came about in the early 1900s when people moved into big cities in big numbers. So the idea of urban decay became more and more visible, more and more reality, and it started creeping into fiction. It probably didn't crystallize until in fiction until the 30s or even 40s, and popularity might not have even been until the 50s. But around this time, with the growth of cities and the mismanagement of it all, because it happened so fast and a lot of people were just in it to kind of grab what they could and run away. A lot of corruption, as I said. Um, and because a lot of people, especially people in higher positions, were dependent on nobody doing anything about it, it all became this whole everything is fine even though the world is burning thing. And if you started to go against it, if you started to point out the problems, you became the problem. So people just in these stories just tend to keep their head down as much as possible until something in them snaps and they draw attention to a problem and usually get on the wrong end of a big stick because of it. But noir can take other forms, and a lot of very interesting noir stories base the whole noir emphasis around something else. A genre that took off very quickly but got kind of overrun by the things it inspired, to be honest, was tech noir. And uh, some avid viewers will know that tech noir was also the name of the nightclub that Sarah Connor hid out in the original Terminator. And as I understand it, that's not a coincidence. Um, the people making the Terminator were very much aware of the genre tech noir and basically just took the name from there because the movie The Terminator is really a good indication of what tech noir was. Where classic noir is about the crushing weight of urbanization and the density and chaos of cities. Tech noir, not surprisingly, is about the rampant growth of technology and how it dehumanizes a lot of things and how we may not be able to control it. The Terminator adds the whole time travel aspect to it, and in fact, kind of undermines the real tech noir idea of it because it's not so much us screwing up things with our technology. the hell is going on here? I think it's Domino and Spike again. But yeah, but true tech noir, if you can call it that, is about the technology that we have today, or perhaps the technology that is just around the corner, and how it can take power away from people and create this big lie that, oh, we have all this technology, so everything is really good because we have technological solutions, but in reality we're undermining ourselves. We are becoming dependent on fragile devices, and we are hollowing out the human experience and the human abilities to cope on their own. And when things go wrong, they go really, really wrong. Shows like Black Mirror are a good example of modern tech noir, with its portrayal of technologies that may be just around the corner. But to be perfectly honest, Black Mirror doesn't go far enough in a lot of cases. It maybe you could say that a series like for those who don't know, Black Mirror is a series of individual stories about technology gone astray in more or less our world. Or as in fact, I think this phrase was coined by someone in the tech noir genre, 10 minutes into the future. uh, a phrase meaning that it's not exactly now, but it's almost now. It's what's right around the corner. And Black Mirror is a lot of episodes that each detail a story of some technology gone awry just around the corner, a near future technology. But as you may have already figured out, tech noir got pretty quickly supplanted, at least back when it came around in the 80s, got pretty quickly supplanted by its more colorful younger brother, Cyberpunk, which was, to my understanding, inspired by tech noir. Cyberpunk is basically tech noir taken to an extreme. But yeah, tech noir deals with all the horrible things that all this beautiful technology can bring with it, and it deals with people who have to maintain the idea that this is all just fine. It's all just fine. Usually, people who have to defend the honors, so to speak, of the companies creating this technology, or the governments financing it. Whether that is by making it look like this is all a good thing, or this was just an accident, the cost of progress, I think the phrase is, or by by sweeping it under the rug, by maintaining and creating and maintaining secrecy about the things going wrong, and about people who live in this world of fancy technology gone wrong, and who have to deal with it on a daily basis and be quote unquote professional about it. Because if you start breaking the illusion, then everything starts falling apart. Especially because it starts falling apart for the really powerful people and factions in society. And when they start falling apart, they are not going to die without taking everything around them down with them. So, just like classic noir leads to main characters who are burdened by having to maintain the lie, tech noir often leads to main characters who are burdened by having to maintain this lie, and it can result in many of the same things, like good people turning bad, uh, or good people just breaking down, alcoholism, drug abuse, all that. and with the technology angle, they can usually turn or fall apart or break bad or whatever you want to call it. Things can turn ugly in a lot of novel ways that wouldn't be common in classic noir. Abuse of technology, be that drugs or video games or weapons or anything like that. But tech noir also has an angle that classic noir rarely does. And that angle is the underground rebellion, because tech noir kind of followed in the footsteps of the hacker revolution, where perfectly common people, people without excessive power, but with some unusual skills, suddenly could get the tools to undermine what was going on. And in tech noir stories that go really in deep into the tech noir angle, instead of just using it as a flashy style, the ones that go really into it often have some kind of hacker element to it. This can be actual hackers, as like we know them, people using computers to break into other computers. But it can also just be people who are efficient at hijacking the technology, especially the problematic technology um, that society is built on. If you push it into the future, you can even have them hijacking things like drones or even robots and other things like that, which starts to put you on the border of cyberpunk. Um, but the idea is that we know technology is a shallow cosmetic layer on society, that it's covering up horrible things so that the quote unquote proper people can live without seeing the dark sides of society. But we can kind of mess that cosmetic cover. We can kind of mess it up. We can poke holes in the veil, and that is very often something that makes tech noir just a tiny bit less dark than classic noir. But what is interesting is that when you first start figuring out that tech noir is about this lie about something, you can suddenly start, or sorry, that noir is about this lie. You can suddenly start transferring the main concept of noir to other stories. Let's take a completely made up example here. Let's try to transfer noir to fantasy. What could fantasy noir look like? Well, the two big factors in fantasy that may be applicable. Well, actually, three big factors. One of them can be split into two. The three big factors are the ruling classes, usually built along some kind of monarchy or aristocracy, as seen in the Middle Ages, magic, and fairy tale creatures. So society looks like everything is going right, but there is a big lie. Let's just make it easy for starters and pick one. Let's pick magic. So everything in this fantasy world looks just swell, just great, because magic is solving problems left and right. Magic users are very respected, highly respected. Um, and the powers that be treasure the magic users as they use them to improve society. But this is all a lie. In reality, magic users make demonic pacts to get the powers. They fight for power with other magic users using all the dirty tricks in the book. Many of them are actually undead or are siphoning powers from innocent victims who are from the groups in society that nobody notices keep disappearing. This could be peasants. This could be city poor. Uh, but it could also, for that matter, be soldiers. Fantasy often has a lot of wars. Nobody would notice if 100 or even 1,000 soldiers disappeared every now and then. So there is this dark secret um, of magic that common folks may sometimes suspect a slight bit about, but they can never confirm it, and they really would rather not think about it because they like the idea that magic is just this amazing solution to all their problems. But the main characters in the story don't have this luxury. They may be the ones covering up when a wizard goes rogue and does a lot of bad things, or when some magical experiment, or even a continuing magical operation like the sacrifice of soldiers to power, to fuel some kind of magic, when that starts to go wrong, they may be the ones who have to cover it up, or they may simply be the ones living on that side of society, constantly trying to figure out who did what. Maybe they are advisors hired by kings and noblemen to figure out uh, what kind of dark magic is going on when something weird happens, just like detectives in classic noir. So they are the ones. The main characters are the ones, or are some of the ones, who need to accept that the world is a horrible place that is just trying to pretend to be nice, and they have to deal with it. They have to live as part of the lie, and they have to face all the horrible things that happen and stay calm and quote unquote professional about it. But maybe like the hackers, there are things that undermine it, that things that maybe there are magic users that can do things without being cruel or dark about it, but they are not in power. And the idea of bringing down some dark wizard and getting a quote unquote light wizard um, more moved into to that space could be a small win. But the world is dark. Noir is about facing the realities of a dark, cruel, and scary world, and simply continuing to handle it. You cannot break from this, and you cannot beat it, so you need to just continue to handle your shit. And that way, Noir can, you could transfer Noir to post-apocalyptic. You could transfer it to starbound sci-fi. You could transfer it to cosmic horror. That would be interesting. Cosmic horror that needs to a cosmic horror that needs to look like a good thing to the majority of people, but you know that it is not. I'm not going to go into the details here because that's wow. That it just occurred to me how utterly dark that would actually be. But you can transfer it to anything. You can transfer it to any historical period. You could have Victorian noir. You could have noir in Roman times or Greek times. You could have noir in the Old West. You just need to figure out what is the big lie what is the lie pretending is good, and what is the lie hiding is bad. And then you place the main characters either on the edge of that lie or somewhere inside the dark part of it. It should be noted that main characters can also be on the light side of the lie, the ones who are pretending, either pretending to be all the nice stuff just so that they can do what they do. You may need to pretend that you're part of high society in order to discover all the darkness that's going on there. Or they may actually honestly believe the lie and slowly come to realize that it is a lie. That is a very common origin story in noir. Someone who honestly believed in the system and believed that things were as they were meant to be, and problems were just problems that were not yet solved, but who then discovers that there's a darker truth to everything. And that, I guess, is noir in a nutshell.